Imagine boarding a first-class flight, settling into your luxurious seat, ready to enjoy the comfort you paid for, only to be told you don't belong there. Not because your ticket is wrong, not because of some mistake, but because of how you look. This is exactly what happened to Naomi Carter, a black woman who was quietly reading a book in her first-class seat when a flight attendant tapped her on the shoulder with a polite but firm request. "Ma'am, I think you're in the wrong section." The unspoken message was clear. She didn't fit the image of someone who could afford such luxury. Naomi, dressed in simple jeans and a sweater, her hair in neat braids, wasn't what they expected a first-class passenger to look like. But what they didn't know, this wasn't just any flight for her. In fact, this airline, it was hers. The tension in the cabin was instant. Other passengers glanced over, some with sympathy, others with curiosity, a few with judgment. The flight attendant, a polished woman in her 40s named Linda, stood her ground, her smile tight. "There must be some confusion," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Economy is further back." Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. With calm precision, she pulled out her boarding pass and handed it over. "No confusion," she said. "Seat 2A, first class." Linda's smile faltered as she scanned the ticket. It was valid. But instead of an apology, she hesitated, then leaned in and whispered, "Ma'am, if you can't afford this seat, we can arrange a more suitable one." Naomi's blood ran cold. This wasn't about a ticket. This was about her. Her skin, her clothes, her presence in a space where some people still believed she didn't belong. But Naomi wasn't just any passenger. She was the majority shareholder of Sky High Airlines, a fact she kept private to observe how her company treated customers when no one was watching. And what she was seeing was unacceptable. As Linda walked away to consult with the captain, whispers spread through the cabin. A businessman in the next seat smirked, muttering something about people trying to act above their station. The older woman clutched her purse tighter. Meanwhile, Naomi sat perfectly still, her mind racing. She had built this airline from the ground up, fought for every contract, every deal, in an industry that rarely welcomed people who looked like her. And now, on her own plane, she was being treated like an imposter. Then came the announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. There's been a slight situation." The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "We'll be escorting a passenger to a different seat for comfort reasons." The words were careful, but the meaning was unmistakable. They were going to remove her. Naomi's fingers tightened around her armrest. She had a choice: stay silent and let this happen, or reveal exactly who she was. But before she could decide, the cockpit door swung open. The captain, a tall man with a stern expression, stepped out and froze the second he saw her. His face went pale because he recognized her. And in that moment, everything was about to change. The captain's eyes widened as they locked onto Naomi's face. For a long, tense second, the entire cabin seemed to hold its breath. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Ms. Carter?" The name sent a ripple through the flight attendants nearby. Linda's confident posture stiffened, her fingers fumbling with the boarding pass still in her hand. Naomi didn't move, didn't blink, just watched as realization dawned on the faces around her. This wasn't how she had planned to reveal herself. Naomi had always preferred to stay behind the scenes, observing how her company operated when no one knew the boss was watching. She had built Sky High Airlines from nothing, a dream born in a tiny apartment where she studied aviation business late into the night, determined to break into an industry that had long shut people like her out. She knew the statistics. Less than 2% of airline executives were black, and even fewer were women. Every contract, every negotiation, every battle for respect had been fought twice as hard. But she never expected to fight it here in first class on her own plane. The captain, a seasoned pilot named Robert Hayes, quickly composed himself. "Ma'am, I had no idea you were on this flight," he stammered, his earlier authority crumbling. Linda's mouth opened, then closed, her cheeks flushing deep red. The businessman who had smirked earlier suddenly found his newspaper very interesting. Naomi let the silence stretch, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone in the cabin. Finally she spoke, her voice calm but edged with something sharp. "Captain Hayes, is it standard procedure to remove paying passengers based on how they look?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Hayes swallowed hard. "No, ma'am, of course not." But Naomi wasn't finished. She turned to Linda, whose name tag now felt like an accusation. "And you," Naomi said, her tone softer but no less cutting. "Have you ever done this before? Told someone they didn't belong because they didn't look like they could afford it?" Linda's lips trembled. I was just following protocol." "What protocol?" Naomi interrupted. "The one that assumes a black woman in casual clothes must be in the wrong seat?" The words landed like a hammer. "A few." Rose back, a young woman gasped, her phone subtly angled toward the scene. Naomi noticed but didn't react. "Let them record. Let the world see." The captain cleared his throat, desperate to regain control. "Ms. Carter, perhaps we could discuss this privately." "No," Naomi said firmly. "This isn't a private matter. This is about how your crew treats passengers when they think no one important is watching." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze sweeping over the now silent first-class cabin. "And I was watching." A murmur spread through the passengers. The older woman who had clutched her purse earlier now looked down, ashamed. The businessman adjusted his tie, suddenly sweating. And Linda? She looked like she wanted to disappear. But Naomi wasn't done. She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek tablet. With a few taps, she pulled up an employee file, Linda's file. "You've been with Sky High for 8 years, Naomi said, scanning the screen. "No prior complaints, good performance reviews." She looked up. "So why today? Why me?" Linda's voice was barely audible. I didn't recognize you." Naomi's laugh was short, humorless. "That's the problem. You shouldn't have to recognize me to treat me with respect." She turned back to the captain. "Delay the flight, gather the crew. We're having a meeting. Right here, right now." Hayes hesitated. "But the other passengers—" "Will wait," Naomi said. "Or they can deplane and book with another airline. Their choice." The message was clear. This ends now. As the stunned crew scrambled to follow orders, Naomi sat back in her seat, her expression unreadable. But inside, her mind was racing. This wasn't just about one flight attendant's mistake. This was about a culture, one she had unknowingly allowed to fester in her own company. How many others had been treated this way? How many had been too afraid or too exhausted to speak up? And most importantly, what was she going to do about it?